dangerous criminals sentenced to death have the right to order any food of their choice, which essentially becomes their last meal in life. This ancient tradition is observed in most countries. It was once believed that such an honor could soothe the soul of the convict after the sentence is carried out. Welcome to the NSK Show channel, and today I've compiled the most unusual food preferences of criminals. James Edward Smith was sentenced to death for a serious crime. For his last meal, he asked for a piece of soil. A strange choice, isn't it? However, the prison administration decided that since he had not been previously seen eating soil, the man was asking for it to perform a voodoo ritual, the impact of which was unclear. The prison officials diplomatically explained their refusal to James Edward Smith, saying that since soil was not part of the prison diet, it was not available in the cafeteria. The inmate was incredibly upset upon learning this, and then requested a jar of plain yogurt. That was his final wish, which was duly fulfilled. What do you think? Why might James Edward Smith have needed soil? Was he really planning to eat it? Thomas Grasso. A man named Thomas Grasso stood out as a house burglar who robbed not just one family. In these robberies, he committed 2 serious crimes, for which he was sentenced to death. As I mentioned, in most countries, the last meal is provided to the condemned. Thomas didn't miss his chance. He thought long and hard and ordered himself a large set of expensive products. It included braised shellfish and mussels, juicy fried ribs, a McDonald's cheeseburger, a plate of large strawberries with cream, several pumpkin pies, 2 milkshakes with bananas, and SpaghettiOs spaghetti. The last item on his list turned out to be crucial. And you know what's interesting? Thomas got spaghetti, but from a different brand. He was very upset, and his last words before execution were, "I never got my SpaghettiOs. They gave me plain macaroni. I want the press to know about this." Instead of fully enjoying his exquisite dinner, especially compared to prison food, he chose to keep protesting and ultimately remained dissatisfied. Lawrence Russell Brewer. In Texas, there were never any special restrictions on ordering the last meal before execution. But that was until this guy showed up behind bars. What could he have done if they reviewed the whole system, you might ask? Well, Lawrence Russell Brewer, sentenced to death, ordered himself a feast. 2 pieces of fried chicken with onion sauce, a triple bacon cheeseburger from a fast food restaurant, an omelet with beef, cheese, tomatoes, pickled onions, sweet peppers, and jalapeno, and also a pizza with ketchup and mushrooms. You might think that's all? Well, that wasn't the case. Next came grilled meat, half loaf of white bread, 3 fajitas with all the dressings, a block of vanilla ice cream with chocolate chips, peanut butter with chopped peanuts on top, and 3 bottles of fizzy root beer. Of course, by law, his last wish was fulfilled. When all this was brought to Lawrence, he cynically turned his head away from the food, saying he wasn't hungry. That's why, since then, inmates in Texas are no longer granted the right to a last meal. What do you think? Is it a fair decision? Share your opinion in the comments below this video. Let's move on. Philip Ray Workman. The story of a man named Philip Ray Workman is far from straightforward. He was convicted of a crime, yet there were witnesses in court who claimed he was innocent. Despite this, he was still sent to prison, and a year later sentenced to death in Tennessee. Judging by the previous 2 criminals, you might have guessed that many of them request some indulgence for their last meal, based solely on their own selfish desires. But Philip Ray Workman was not among them. He asked to buy a huge vegetarian pizza and to feed it to a homeless person. In my opinion, quite a noble gesture. However, when prison staff refused to fulfill his last wish, Workman went on a hunger strike. Just imagine, he didn't eat anything for 3 whole weeks, only occasionally drinking water. Yet, after some time, his last wish was granted. And who knows, maybe this man was truly innocent of the crime he was accused of. Perhaps he suffered his punishment unjustly. Unfortunately, we will never know that now. William Bonney. Despite the seemingly kind face of this man, he turned out to be a real despot. Along with his accomplices, he committed a series of horrific crimes for which he paid with his life. For his last meal, he demanded 2 huge pizzas with sausage, cheese, sun-dried tomatoes, pepperoni, and mushrooms. After eating his fill, William Bonney followed it up with a serving of chocolate ice cream and drank, imagine this, a total of 18 cans of Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I became curious. How could so much fit into one man, and all in one sitting? Robbie Lee Gardner. In June 1985, Robbie Lee Gardner pleaded guilty to committing a series of aggravated crimes, for which the court sentenced him to life imprisonment without parole. Undoubtedly, a sad prospect. Upon hearing this sentence, the stunned man began threatening everyone present at the court hearing. He was also vehemently opposed to being forced to wear a special leg brace that would be locked if he attempted to escape. Moreover, Gardner was diagnosed with a dissociative personality disorder. Well, as you can imagine, he was not an easy fellow. After assaulting other inmates in the prison, the man's sentence was reconsidered, ultimately leading to his execution. Robbie Lee Gardner had enough time to carefully consider his last meal. By that time, he had already spent a quarter of a century in prison. So, he ordered a large lobster cooked with spices and aromatic herbs, and a huge steak. For dessert, pistachio ice cream with chocolate chips and apple pie. But he had one more request: to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy during his feast. Ricky Ray Rector. This man, too, wasn't much different from the others, and was sentenced to death. He took his sentence so much to heart that he even tried to take his own life, but doctors saved him. The execution was postponed until the time when the offender recovered and got out of the hospital bed. During this time, Ricky Ray Rector had enough time to think about what he would like to taste on his last day. Having recovered a bit, he asked for a juicy beefsteak, roasted chicken with apples, a glass of cherry soda, and of course, his favorite pecan pie. Rector, who had undergone a lobotomy, was diagnosed as schizophrenic and asked a prison guard to save a portion of his pie for later, so to speak. A strange decision, isn't it? He was executed in 1992, and it was only 10 years later in the United States that a law was passed, stating that such punishments could no longer be applied to the mentally ill. Robert Buell. This man named Robert Buell didn't go all out to enjoy his last meal in life. Perhaps that's what set him apart from most of his fellow inmates. His main wish was to eat just one single olive, but it had to have a pit. And you won't believe how much enjoyment he derived from it, as if trying to forever remember that divine taste. After Robert Buell was executed, the guards of his prison said that the man asked to be buried with that pit. But why would he need that, you might wonder? It turns out, Buell also mentioned that he dreamed of being reborn as a tree. The truth of whether another unique wish of the criminal was fulfilled remains unknown. Timothy McVeigh. This man named Timothy McVeigh, from the state of Indiana, caused a lot of trouble and suffering to many families. In 1995, he was imprisoned and soon thereafter sentenced to death. For his last meal, Timothy McVeigh didn't demand too much. He only wished for a kilogram of mint chocolate chip ice cream sprinkled with chocolate crumbs. Apparently, it was his most favorite treat. Having watched this video, you may have formed a certain picture in your mind. That people make their choice, understanding one simple truth. This will be the last taste they experience in their lives. And as you can see, everyone has entirely different tastes and desires. Well, draw your own conclusions. That's all for today. Don't forget to like this video and of course, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.